The issue of marijuana revenues is high on the agenda as Canada's finance ministers meet in Ottawa. The provinces want more money because they say they're bearing most of the costs involved with legalization. Just before they sat down for a working dinner with the Fed's Bill Morneau, he spoke to the media.
What we're trying to achieve here is to make sure that we keep kids safe and that we get black market out so the criminals aren't gaining from the marijuana sales. So what that means is we need to think about how we do that. It means that we need to think about the municipalities and the way they're going to work. So our flexibility is driven by a realization that we need to cover our costs, they're legitimate, but we also need to think about how municipalities and provinces can cover the costs required to meet our goals.
Political consultant Michael Geoghegan joins us now from Victoria, BC. Michael, it is no surprise that Canadians are pretty stoked about what's going to happen in July, but so are the finance ministers.
Well, marijuana just in the province of British Columbia alone is probably worth about $4 billion a year. So, yes, this is potentially very lucrative for all three levels of government. But at the same time, if they get too greedy, they'll keep the black market alive and thriving. So it's definitely a balancing act.
What do you think is going to happen at this meeting? I mean, some arm twisting or some, kicking it down the road and saying, well, we'll review the revenues as they come in throughout the years?
I think what we're seeing a real divergence in terms of the way that the provinces have chosen to roll out their legalization strategies. We've seen some that want government retailing only. We've seen others like Alberta, which are allowing for private sector retailing. British Columbia looks like it's going to go for some form of mixed retailing, both government and private retailing. So I suspect that the tax schemes are going to vary from province to province as well. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to have an experiment where we're going to see 10 or more different ways of doing things. And then I think over time it will clearly emerge which prove to be the most practical in achieving a multitude of things. One, protecting our kids. Two, bringing government revenue. And three, undercutting the black market. So I think it is a bit of an experiment at this point.
The provinces, it seems, are looking for a 50-50 split at least. Is something like that possible?
Well, of course it's possible. I mean, it all depends on how the federal government and the provinces want to divvy things up. But clearly, it's a situation where the overall size of the pie has to be limited, because if they have exorbitant taxes or exorbitant retailing prices in terms of cannabis, then people will just continue to get their cannabis where they get it now, which is by and large from the black market. The other thing is that the government has to be cognizant of is do they have a sufficient legal supply, and that is where I think some of the more progressive governments might be looking to the so-called gray market and say, how can we take some of these operators who are not affiliated with organized crime and bring them, properly license them and regulate them and bring them, into the regulated market so that we can ensure that whether you're a retailer or a consumer or whatnot, you have access to a reasonable supply of cannabis and cannabinoids.
Bill Morneau now, he's got to be relieved that at least today he gets to talk about something like marijuana revenues with his counterparts instead of something like blind trust in his personal finances.
Yeah, sure. I suspect he's tempted to pass a blunt and say, hey, everyone, chill out. Let's talk about this instead of, as you said, stock sales and the like. One of the things that they will be talking about that's related to that topic, however, is the transparency of corporations. And that's certainly something that's been a bit of a bone of contention. I think BC's finance ministers brought it up, where you can have numbered companies and other mechanisms where it's very difficult to prove who owns what in terms of companies, which then makes it easier for companies and individuals to avoid paying their fair share of taxes. So I know that's something else the finance ministers are going to discuss.
Political commentator Michael Geoghegan joining us from Victoria. Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you.